In this video, I will demonstrate how to take your individual puzzle pieces and constrain them together or assemble them together into the final puzzle cube system that you have designed. And an example of the finished product is shown here. This is an assembly of all 5 puzzle pieces. Here you see the assembly icon that you will locate in Inventor. Notice how it is 3 cubes put together. That's a little symbol of what you are going to be doing within Inventor. Here you also see my blue and my green puzzle piece constrained together. You will need 3 constraints when putting together 2 puzzle pieces. The constraints are named a mate and a flush. Assembly constraints are parameters that define geometric relationships between components in a CAD assembly. In essence, they are holding the pieces together in their predetermined positions. The window here shows the 4 types of constraints that are located within Inventor. They are a mate and flush constraint, an angle constraint, a tangent constraint, and an insert constraint. We will primarily use mate and flush constraints in this course, and specifically on the Puzzle Cube project we will only use mate and flush constraints. In this course we will rarely use angle or tangent constraints, but we will use insert constraints later on. A mate constraint is where the surfaces are put together face to face. Here is the icon showing that within the constraint window. A flush constraint is where the surfaces are on the same plane but not face to face. Degrees of freedom is directly related to an assembly. A component floating in space has 6 degrees of freedom. There are 3 rotations around the X, Y, and Z axes, and 3 linear translations along the X, Y, and Z axes. Degrees of freedom are systematically removed in an assembly until only the desired components are allowed to move, or until all components are held in position and do not move. One of the first steps, and a very important step, is to look at your isometric sketches and select one of the following for your assembly. One piece that is at the bottom or center on the front view. In my example, I am using my green piece as my first component brought into the assembly. Another way to look at this same puzzle is to pick a piece that is central to all of the other pieces. My blue piece is in the middle of my puzzle cube, and all of the other pieces touch my blue piece in some manner. Either way, I can use my green piece or my blue piece as my first component in my assembly. The first component brought into an assembly is grounded by default. Don't change it. You will see a thumbtack looking icon in your browser for that first component. All degrees of freedom are removed from the first component. Again, be thoughtful about which piece you bring in first. In my example, I could do either my green puzzle piece or my blue puzzle piece, having one of those brought in first. Add your second piece using the place component tool and your third, fourth, and fifth puzzle pieces brought in. We have previously talked about the X, Y, and Z axis and planes, and they are shown here just as a reminder. As you assemble your puzzle pieces, look to identify 3 adjacent surfaces. On my green piece, I have identified surface 1, 2, and 3, 3 adjacent surfaces here that I'm going to constrain on my green piece. We also want to identify the types of constraints to use. Between my 3 adjacent surfaces on my blue piece, surface 1 on both pieces will be a mate constraint, face to face. Surfaces 2 and 3 on both pieces will be flush constraints. Now I will demonstrate the Inventor process of creating the assembly. You will need to open Inventor and select New and the English template and a standard IAM and select Create. Be patient, wait for the file to open. This is a new file. What you will see primarily is a blank screen, but look in your browser. You should see that assembly is showing in there. This will be slightly different. Your first step is to select Place Component, and that opens your window, and you want to find your first component that you're going to bring in. And I'm going to bring in my green puzzle piece, and there it is. As I move my mouse around, you'll notice a slightly lighter shade of the same piece. I only need one of these, so I'm going to right click and select OK, or I could push Escape on my keyboard. I want to repeat that process and navigate to my second puzzle piece, my blue puzzle piece, and bring that in, and I click it once and then right click OK or push Escape. In this example, you can see that the pieces are in the right position. There are 2 controls over here, a move and a move command, and I can click on that in the menu and then click on the puzzle piece and move it. There is also a rotate command that allows me to rotate an individual component. In this case, I really don't need to rotate the component, but notice that there are 2 different types of rotations here. This icon is a flat plane rotation, sort of a 2D rotation, and then this icon is more of a 3-dimensional rotation. You can also use the grab bars on the sides and the top and the bottom to flip your part around. I highly recommend that you bring in the parts and position them approximately in the proper orientation of how they will be going together. In this case, these 2 parts are going together in a manner as they are shown here. And so I can simply push Escape and continue on. I'm going to click the constraint icon here, and my first is going to be a mate constraint, that side, and then I'm going to rotate both pieces around, and sometimes you got to work it around, and there's my second surface, and then I click Apply. Now I'm going to escape for a moment and put it back in home view. What I just did is constrained those 2 surfaces. In this view, it doesn't look like I did anything. It looks like the piece can still float all around. But if you look in the front view of this, I can only move this straight up and down. I cannot move this left to right. So those 2 surfaces are constrained. I'm going to put it back in my home view. I'm going to bring back my constraint window, and here I want to change to a flush constraint, and I want the top of my green piece to be flush with the top of my blue, and click Apply. And then I want the front of my green piece to be flush with the front of my blue piece, and to click Apply. And Here I have my two puzzle pieces constrained, and I continue this process with each of my other pieces, bringing in the place component and bringing in my other puzzle pieces and assembling them together.